let me just introduce Dr. Peter Lichtenberg. He is the director of Institute of Gerontology at the Wayne State University. He has worked on clinical geropsychologist. He has researched, is a program director and national director in gerontology for 34 years. He has contributed significantly in areas including financial exploitations, Alzheimer's disease, and late-stage depression. He is nationally known for his financial decision-making capacity, vulnerability, and undue influence in older adults. In 2020, Dr. Lichtenberg won the Specialty Board Award in Geropsychology for the American Board of Professional Psychology and was elected President of the Gerontological Society of America. Now, I welcome Dr. Lichtenberg to enlighten us on today's webinar topic for which he is very passionate about. Dr. Lichtenberg.
Thank you so much, Casey. That was such a nice introduction. I so appreciate it. And I appreciate the invitation to be speaking with you all today. I want to cover a lot, so I might talk a little fast, but I'll try to keep it in English and not academia. But I do want to review a couple of things. One, I want to go over a couple of cognitive aging concepts that you may not be familiar with and how they affect finances. Briefly discuss what dementia is, why it's difficult to detect, our new wallet study, what we're learning, and then introduce the concept of financial vulnerability and in the way that we define it and how we got there and our research on this. And then we have a website that has all kinds of free information, training, resources, and surveys for caregivers and older adults. So let's start with the primer. Take you to school here. This is classic gerontology, cognitive aging. Talks about two kinds of cognitive abilities, crystallized and fluid intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is really facts and expertise. So think about your vocabulary. You didn't stop learning words in your 20s, 30s, 40s. You kept adding to it, and you didn't have to subtract words that you already knew. So the same is true with expertise. As you build up expertise across the life course, you don't have to get rid of some of the expertise you had. You're just adding to it. And so crystallized intelligence can increase throughout much of the life course. And this is one of the reasons why older workers are so valuable. This expertise that they've built up allows them to be very efficient and effective in the workplace compared to less experienced workers. Now, fluid intelligence is the kind of cognitive activity that people usually think about, but fluid intelligence is what we think about in terms of memory for new events, the details, a new problem, difficult problems to solve, reaction time. We slow down. It takes us longer to work through new problems. We may not remember as many details as we age. So what happens with fluid intelligence as we get older? We see some very modest declines, really, until people are in their 80s. So there's what I was saying. There's just some very modest declines in new memory and problem-solving ability as we age. But what we always have to remember is that there's a lot of individual differences. So some people don't decline at all. That's that top line right up here. Don't decline at all. This is 8 years. They started in their 70s. They might have ended in their mid to late 80s, and they didn't decline cognitively. That's about 15 to 18% of us. And about 70% of us decline just a little bit across that 8 years cognitively. And some people, for reasons that we don't fully understand, decline a bit more, but they don't have dementia. They just have a little bit more memory problems as they age, memory decline. Well, how does that relate to the ability to manage money? And that's really what we're talking about today, is finances and financial vulnerability. And the truth of the matter is, for the most part, it doesn't impact it negatively at all. As a matter of fact, the question is, well, given cognitive aging, we saw some of those declines. Why do people manage debt, pay bills, maintain good credit just as good as 50-year-olds did? And the answer is crystallized intelligence. So if you've been taking care of your finances for years and years, you've built up that expertise. And in your later years, no matter what the regular cognitive aging does, you continue to be expert at managing those finances and do it just as well as you did before. So if you didn't do it that well before, you continue to be that way. If you did it well, why you continue to maintain those good habits. But for those taking over finances, let's say your spouse was the one who took care of the finances and they become ill, maybe have a dementia themselves or pass away. Now it falls on you to take over the finances. Now it becomes a much more effortful task because you don't have that expertise to build on. Well, the scary part of the story for all this is that when we start to change in terms of memory loss, our financial management does too. And this health and retirement study, which is the largest population-based study of older adults in America, it's based out of the U of M. It's been ongoing for now about 30 years. And in this latest round, every 2 years, they resurvey people. Those people who had a memory decline of 10 to 15%, that is, they just remembered 10 to 15% fewer words, equated to a 15 to 18% wealth loss. And the scary part about that is most of the people, over 60%, remain totally undiagnosed, untreated, maybe even unaware that they were having these kinds of problems. So let's talk then about what dementia is. Not just cognitive decline, but dementia represents a decline from previous levels of functioning, especially in our cognitive symptoms. And in order to have a dementia, you have to have cognitive impairment that's detected both through history and objective assessment. And the criteria for probable Alzheimer's disease include meeting this criteria for dementia, but this one, insidious onset. In other words, it's pretty invisible what the onset is. And we were worried that that coincides with when all people are losing finances. Now, if we look backwards, we can see a clear-cut history of worsening cognition. And so let's talk about our wallet study. What are we doing? We are really seeking individuals who maybe believe that they're starting to have some memory loss, or maybe they've received a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment. And we're asking them to share with us 12 months of their main checking account records, so that we can look at their financial management across this time. We're actually now expanding it so that we include people who do have no cognitive problems at all. And we do a couple of different interviews. And of course, we do compensate people for their time. Now, we haven't crunched our data yet, but we're learning some things that I want to share with you today. And I also want you to feel like this is an invitation for you to contact us and become a participant in the wallet study. One thing is that older adults who perceive their memory to be declining, even if they don't have a diagnosis, they're less likely to keep account of their spending. So one of the things that goes is that people stop monitoring their expenses. And remember, and you've all experienced this, finances in older age is a time of fluid intelligence because your income changes. You're not getting a paycheck now. You're getting different sources of income, Social Security, pensions, perhaps drawing down on IRA. So that is kind of a change in your monthly budget. So it's important to kind of be able to track your spending. We find that they're more likely to be overpaying for certain items when people aren't shopping around anymore, and when things get to be way expensive for certain things, they just keep paying it. They're more likely to be financially exploited. And we'll get to a little bit more about that later. And the wealth loss, we're looking at it from very on the ground view, is likely to be because they're spending more annually than their income brings in. And they're very less likely to know how to adjust to their budget. And one of the things that stands out to us also is they're much more likely to be helping others with finances. So other family members typically. That is, using their own finances to support others in their family. And which is fine, but they often don't track how much they're doing that. So we're also studying financial decision-making, and we've created new ways to understand and measure that. And we're exploring how financial decision-making is connected to managing your wealth, your money, and to financial exploitation. And here's the heart of the legal aspects of financial decision-making. In other words, when you enter a contract or give a gift, this is what you have to do in order to make an informed decision. And if you've ever been involved in a lawsuit to get out of a contract that you said was, fraudulent or something, these are the core aspects of it. Can you communicate a choice? What is it you want to do? Can you communicate an understanding of that choice? How's this going to impact your finances? How much risk are you taking is an appreciation question. Is it going to impact other people? What's your rationale for doing this? Those are the legal aspects. This is really written into the laws of informed decision-making for everything from health decisions to financial decisions. But when we created this scale with our experts, they told us, we got to understand what we call contextual factors too, because the context often influences the choice that we make and our own ability to carry out those legal aspects of informed decisions. So financial awareness about money, psychological vulnerability around money, and susceptibility. And so what does that look like? Perceived financial vulnerability. These are national data. The Health and Retirement Study allows you to submit questions that they may take in for an experimental module. Ours were accepted, and they, in 2019, they asked these questions, and in 2020, they released the data just recently. Look at this. This reflects how older adults across the country are experiencing perceived financial vulnerability. Over almost 2/3 are anxious about financial decisions, at least sometimes. Over half wish they had someone to talk to about finances. Almost 1/3 sometimes are at least worried that someone's going to take away their financial freedom. Over 1/4 are unsure or not confident in making those financial decisions. And almost 1/3 are treated with less respect and courtesy during financial transactions. So that's what kinds of things that we're talking about with vulnerability. And so now we review the financial decision-making aspects. You have the legal, the logical aspects. What's the choice? Do we understand the choice? Do we, what's the rationale for why we're doing it? And do we appreciate the consequences or the risks and benefits? But the other part is the context of our situation. How are we for money? Are we feeling financial strain? Are we feeling relationship strain around money? Are we feeling anxious or depressed or invisible around our financial decisions? Do we wish we had someone to talk to? So let's talk then, we start to tie these two together with financial exploitation. We talked about financial management a little bit, talked about financial decision-making. And now let's bring in the third partner, financial exploitation, and how this is impacted by the other two and by cognitive decline. What is it? Let's define financial exploitation. It's a misappropriation or misuse of funds of an older adult and or a vulnerable adult. And it includes fraud, family and friend exploitation, exploitation by staff or professionals. And the kind that we're going to talk about is some kind of interaction between an older adult victim and another, quote, trusted person. And trust can be developed very quickly. I just was told a story by a colleague of mine whose father was just defrauded of about $4,000. And what the scammer knew was that his colleague grew up in a foreign country and was not a native English speaker. He spoke English fine, but he also had this language that he grew up with. And the scammer spoke to him in his native language, developed that trust very quickly by doing that. And that's how scammers do. They look for something. How can we be aligned with each other? Here's the domains of financial exploitation. Thefts and scams is how you lose the money. Someone either steals it or they scam you. They mislead you. The next three are the mechanisms of how people get to that. They abuse your trust. This can be professionals. This can be family or friends. But you trust somebody and then they abuse that trust. Financial entitlement, which usually refers to relatives, often adult children, how they feel about their older parents' monies. Unfortunately, some adult children, as they start to help their older parents, feel that they are entitled now to their older parents' money because, hey, that's my inheritance. Now and so they start using it. In other words, a good example is I need to take my dad to the doctor, so I better get myself a nice BMW or a wonderful Chrysler. And now I can drive him to the doctor once every couple of months, and I can drive myself around town the rest of the time. And that is entitlement. I don't see anything wrong with that, but there's a lot wrong with that, of course, and we know that. Coercion is a little bit more pernicious. It's systematically, how do I remove somebody's free will and substitute my own? I have to have a lot of control over someone to coerce them. I poison their other relationships. I isolate them. And then we have risk factors, signs of possible financial exploitation. Has anyone been asking you for money frequently? That's a good question to ask. And money management difficulties like we showed. Well, there's two things that work. First thing is that financial exploitation of older persons is on the increase. And the second thing is we're getting better reports on it. And so both of those factors are why the suspicious activity reports that come from financial institutions have quadrupled over the last few years. What kind of institutions am I talking about? Your deposit institutions, banks, credit unions, and your money services businesses where you're wiring money, MoneyGram or Western Union. And that's quadrupled from 1,300 cases a month to 5,700 cases each month. In 2017, the losses connected to these, what they call suspicious activity reports, are $1.7 billion. These are required reports to the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau by these financial institutions. 80% of these losses are to an older person. 7% of older people who experience these losses lost over $100,000, but the average loss was $34,000, quite high. So, what did we do? Well, we wanted to find out how much context mattered. Remember those contextual factors in terms of exploitation. And so we looked at these financial strain and psychological vulnerability and relationship insecurity around finances in a large group of 160 people who were not exploited and 80 people who were. And we had confirmed exploitation. It wasn't just their report of it, but they were in a program to help them get out of some financial problems that we were helping them with. And so we knew how they had been exploited. And these 17 items fell out as excellent items in distinguishing these two categories. And we created our financial vulnerability survey, which I'm going to show you on our website. You can see at the bottom of the screen, olderadultnestegg.com. You can take this 17-item survey for yourself, either to reassure yourself that you are at low risk for exploitation or to find out how vulnerable you are. And these three categories, again, financial strain, satisfaction, self-efficacy, psychological vulnerability around finances, and relationship strain since you've gotten older, or conflict around how you spend money. Those are the three major categories the questions are about. Now, we call these critical items. These are questions that we're teaching clinicians how to use these and follow up on, because they'll tell us a lot. How often do you worry about a financial decision you've recently made? So never, rarely, sometimes, or often. We'll follow up on that if it's sometimes or often. Have you noticed money taken from your bank account without your permission? You'll recognize this question. How often do you wish you had someone to talk to you about finances or feel anxious or downhearted? We also have a memory question. Are your memory, thinking, or ability to reason with regard to finances worse than a year ago? And finally, as a relationship with a family member or friend becomes strained due to finances as you've gotten older. So here's our website, olderadultnestegg.com. You can come onto the site. You can see that there's 3 landing pages for professionals, for older adults, for family and friends. And these are the resources that we have. You can take our survey. You can see right in the middle there, the Financial Exploitation Survey. You can also get a number of resources for older adults if you're concerned about finances. And then we have our Safe Financial Coaching Program for people who've been victims of scams or identity theft and are having trouble resuming cleaning up their credit, or they're worried about their credit. We will provide financial coaching at no charge. So you can make these requests all from our website. You can take the survey. It's totally anonymous. We don't ask for your name, address, anything, birthday, anything. And then the results come just back to you. So there's our SAFE program, Successful Aging Through Financial Empowerment. And even if you're having trouble with your memory and you're having trouble managing money, we can help you with budgets, develop a savings plan, and so forth. So there's a survey, the 17 questions that we talked about. And here's the resource page. So you can see we have COVID resources for older adults, seniors. We have an AARP Fraud Watch network. We have a lot on the latest coronavirus scams because they have been increasing and changing week by week. And so we have some fraud alerts for people. So you may just want to go on the website just for some of the resources. Let's just briefly introduce then the successful aging through financial empowerment. The caregiver empowerment. So one of the things about older persons that have come through our program that have been the victims of scams and identity theft is we find out it's not just about finances. They often have a lot of anxiety and are feeling very stressed and have less social support. And so we're finding that our program addresses those as well. But if you're a caregiver, we also want you to think about finances of the older person, and we'll get to that. So far, we've helped over 100 people with one-on-one services. We've educated probably now closer to 20,000 older adults and professionals about scams and identity theft. Latoya Hall, our social worker, is fabulous with this. Here's the kinds of services we provide. Help people file police and consumer reports. We contact their credit reporting agencies. And here's where we really save people a lot of money and headache. We can help them dispute information on credit reports. So one gentleman recently was very distraught. He had a $24,000 charge on his credit report for a student loan. He was 74 years old. He had never been to college. Somebody had stolen his information, his ID, and successfully gotten themselves a student loan. And happy to say that that was wiped out after Latoya got through helping him dispute it. And he was just ecstatic. We will contact creditors. A lot of times you can negotiate with them. We'll also close accounts, put fraud alerts on credit reports. So again, it goes back to monitoring things. So unfortunately, we have to have some good monitoring in place. And there's the person that makes all the magic happen. Latoya Hall, she's a social worker with a fantastic financial coaching background. You can call her, you can email her, and she will respond. Now let's talk about what we have up here for family and friends for caregivers, because we have some trainings up on our website for 4 things. These are our first 4 trainings. One on detecting early cognitive impairment. I mentioned at the outset that recognizing cognitive decline and dementia is so hard because it's almost invisible. How can you recognize it? Uncovering financial mismanagement. How do you look through somebody's financial records to take a look and see if they have been scammed or they're involved in just sending away monies for places they never would have sent to before? When we did our focus groups with caregivers, about a quarter told us that they realized there really was a significant problem with their loved one because of the finances that were going out the door. In other words, the financial mismanagement. But if you're going to take over somebody's money, like you become their power of attorney, or you become their rep payee in Social Security, or their conservator through the courts, you have to do it correctly. Otherwise, you could get in a lot of trouble. And so we have a module on how to manage somebody else's money. And finally, we have one on how do you navigate difficult conversations? How do you bring up these topics in a way that's safe for everybody? Too often, adult children just sort of burst in on their parents and say, you know, you have to give me control of your bank account. And parents close the door, lock it, change the locks, and say, the hell, I'm giving you anything. And so we don't want to get into that situation. How do we have good conversation that everybody feels safe at so that people are able to protect their money? Now, these trainings on our website are narrated and they're self-paced. So they can be very valuable to you. They're about 15 to 20 minutes each usually. And no charge, of course, to take advantage of those. So we have those online learning, but we also have caregiver resources. We've done a lot of booklets, and we also have a lot of links to recommended readings. So that's how you sign up for it. You go to the For Family and Friends page, and you click on Learning, and you go right to it. And this is what it looks like. You can see they're each about 20 minutes. And the resources for caregivers. And again, you can see, get a lot of downloadable information, a lot about helpful organizations. Now, this is an area that caregiving is neglected, the financial aspects of it, in terms of kind of how do you manage somebody else's money? How do you even talk to them about it? And yet, this is like the third or fourth sought after kind of information by caregivers, especially in earlier stages. We also have a newsletter sign up. You'll get our Caregiver Connection newsletter. Always has some good information, some new information, so you can sign up on our website for that. Okay, time for questions or conversation. I didn't want to present too long. Just want to introduce things so we could get a good conversation going. How can we protect our loved ones from email scams? Is there some software that might help? That's a great question. First of all, it really is going to be important to have some conversation with your loved ones about what does and does not come across email legitimately. So if there's any request for finances over email, it's not going to be legitimate unless somebody has asked an organization to send them a request. There is a lot of software that blocks emails, but scammers are pretty good at getting around that. I don't know which specific ones those are. I'm not an IT person, or our organization has some pretty sophisticated ones, and I've seen it over the years get a lot better at picking up on, you know, what's kind of email scams. One thing to do to protect people, though, is educate them about the types of scams that are going on. That's why some things on our website might be really helpful. There is no email lottery through the United States. So a lot of these email lottery scams are ones that people respond to. The other thing that they have to realize, especially some of the romance scams that we're seeing, is that people are now simply making up profiles and they're not legitimate. So they've got, individuals have to be very careful about what they think is a relationship, a good relationship through internet that really has been controlled by somebody who's simply scamming an older person who's lonely. And we're seeing a tremendous increase in romance scams, and they usually work that way. They usually are working through the internet, through some kind of dating site, so forth. Other questions. I'm single, never married, no dependents, and no close relatives. Do I need to create a trust? I don't think so. A trust really is to avoid probate. if you know where you want your funds to go through, you could create a trust and designate those. But I would suggest that if you have that question, then contact an elder law attorney. We're fortunate in Southeast Michigan to have a lot of great elder law attorneys, and they can answer that question: what would be the benefit of creating a trust, and so forth. The wallet study. Thank you. 313-664-2604. Or you can contact Vanessa at VRORAI, Vanessa Rorai, so VRORAI at wayne.edu. We'd love to have you participate. Another thing we're learning about the wallet study that I meant to say is that people who are losing monies are not only are they not tracking sort of their expenses, but in addition to helping others, they are often using a large number of credit card purchases, and so they don't track things that way as well. When to get a power of attorney for children? I see some questions are going by quickly. The power of attorney question is a great one. Now, are you saying when to give your children power of attorney? And you should always have a power of attorney because if you can't make a decision, you want someone to be able to make it for you. Now, if that's your spouse, you should have a secondary power of attorney as well. You maybe even have a couple secondary powers of attorney. So you can have a, 1, 2, 3 powers of attorney, whoever is able to do it. And so it's very helpful to have that. What you want to talk to an elder law attorney about is, do you want it to be a durable power of attorney or a springing power of attorney? In other words, is it a power of attorney that only takes effect when you become incapacitated? That can be problematic sometimes. So you want to talk to your elder law attorney about that, but it's a good idea to have powers of attorney. Now, I'll tell you that if you want your power of attorney to start helping you manage your money, the best way to do that is to take them to the bank, have the bank take a picture of them and get a signature, because a lot of banks are reluctant to accept powers of attorney. They don't know where this came from and so forth. And so if you're still in sound mind and you bring your power of attorney to the bank ahead of time, before there's any crisis, then if there's ever a crisis, there'll be a record there and you'll be able to use that power of attorney. Next question. My husband has dementia, doesn't look at his phone, but he was on the phone talking to one of the Medicare sales type people. It may have been recorded, you hung up. Is there any way to block that type of call? Again, these are great questions. I'm sorry that I'm not more technologically advanced because I don't know the answer to that. But it really is good that you're kind of keeping an eye on him and his phone because those are exactly the kind of people that scammers are looking for, somebody that can give them information that may be easily confused. Next question, please. Are there sets of foods that help maintain brain health and sharpness? There are, and it goes along with a whole set of lifestyle things. And you're the generation and my generation too, that the things that they kind of taught us in 5th, 6th grade about health is really important. Turns out that Nutrition is very important. So, limit sugars and fats and eat your fruits and vegetables and protein and balanced diet. Turns out that physical activity, what we used to call exercise, that's important. Moving around is important. It's not even just working out, it's just moving your body. It turns out that stimulating your mind is important. So hopefully I've given you some things to think about. That's a good thing, new learning. It turns out actually that social support is important. This is one of the things we're so worried about during COVID. Older persons who are kind of homebound, who are having to protect themselves and don't have a lot of social support. We're very worried about how that's going to impact their brain health, not just their mood. And it turns out that having some pleasure in your life and not depression becomes very important too. So all of these lifestyle factors impact our brain. There's no doubt about it, and they impact brain health. If you go onto our website, we now have a section on brain health by Dr. Anna Doherty on the older adult page. I think you'd like it. I think you'd find it really good. So recommend you go there. Next question. What is your view on hiring a geriatric care manager to help out? I think it's a good thing to hire somebody who can give you a good assessment first of what you need, whether you then go somewhere else to hire that need or through that manager, they help out. Now, if you're talking about finances, what you might be want for somebody to help out is what they call a money manager, somebody that comes and will work on finances with you on a regular basis. A daily money manager, that's a profession that's increasing quite a bit. And that can be very, very helpful. It can be very helpful. Whatever you do, I always recommend that you get a second pair of eyes to watch over what's being done. So, let's say I have a wonderful brother who is great with finance. He's willing to help me out. I have my brother help me. Well, who's another person then that every 6 months or so can look and see what we're doing? Because we don't want any situation where somebody's going to possibly abuse trust. Next slide, please. If you know there's financial exploitation of a parent from a sibling, and because of death of your father, you became the power of attorney and trustee of the family trust, how long do I have to report what has happened in the past? Okay, so you've become a power of attorney and trustee, and you've seen that one of your siblings felt entitled and you believe financially exploited your parent. So what are the issues in that? The issues are, was it theft? I don't know what the statute of limitations is on that, unfortunately. I hadn't had that question before. It's a good one. But let's just say it was fairly recently. Some of the questions that you have to think about is, was it theft? Did your father have some role in giving the money? And if he did your father have capacity? Or what evidence did you have that he didn't have capacity? Did you notice your sibling isolating your father more, poisoning his relationship with others more? Was he unduly influencing your father? Those become very complicated legal questions, but they certainly happen. I've been involved in a lot of those cases as an expert. And so you have to kind of build a timeline that shows what's happened, what you think has happened, and why your father wasn't capable or was unduly influenced in giving that money. Next question, please. Recommendations for protecting seniors about social media manipulative practices. Yeah, I think, unfortunately, it's important for people to be educated and to be a bit skeptical of things. They really need to understand how much scammers are focusing on older persons and trying to get their money through a multitude of ways. And so the more people are aware of the specific kinds of scams that are going on, the more they can protect themselves. To just, one of the worries is that, some people are just going to be trusting that everything they read is going to be true. And so it's always good to ask people to kind of think about how they're protecting themselves. We're using a technique called motivational interviewing to have these conversations. That's where you really partner with somebody. You don't lecture them, but you ask them what they know about manipulative practices on social media. You come in with some, and have they thought about any risks out there? How do they use social media? What part is it in their life? So you want to learn from them kind of what's the role, and are they open to learning about some of the things that are going on out there, and how can they make a plan to protect themselves? Does Older Adult Nest Egg have information protecting seniors from social media? Yeah, our resources page has a lot of resources about how to protect yourself across a variety of domains. So please check it out. As a child managing my parents' money, what are appropriate techniques for involving my mom? Dad has Alzheimer's. Full involvement is overwhelming, but it's their money. I also have 3 older brothers. What do you recommend for involving them and what I'm doing for my parents financially? This is a really wonderful question. So the first thing is kind of talking with your mom about what it is that she wants you to do and what is she comfortable doing or being involved with. I think it's probably good to involve her in, if you do regular bill paying, to involve her in at least reviewing what bills were paid, maybe over the last week or two. To also involve her in reading the bank statement every month. And also, if there are retirement accounts that you're drawing from, reminding her what income comes in every month or what decisions have to be made. Now, as far as your brothers go, you want to make sure that you don't, and I know just from your question that you don't do this, but so important people understand, don't intermingle your funds with theirs in any way, shape, or form. She may want to pay for something for you, and that gets tricky in a situation like this when you're managing somebody else's money, because you don't want your brothers to feel like, well, you're getting special favors. If she's going to pay you to help do this, that's okay, but it should probably be a contract that's written up by an attorney so that it's all above board and you can let your brothers see the contract and so forth. As far as involving them, it's probably good to every 6 months or so give them just a status report on what you're doing, what mom's doing, and what the overall financial picture looks like. Maybe not the details of it, but are they doing fine financially? I mean, a lot of times adult children have no idea about their parents' finances, and so they're worried they're going to run out of money or something like that. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. What percentage of males remain mentally alert into old age and all the way to the end? That's a great question. I don't know the exact answer to that, but we know, and it depends on when the end is, when people get to 100, it's more likely they're going to have some kinds of confusion, not always though, than if they die in their 70s. So The thing is that as we saw from those curves, most people have very modest changes with aging. And when there is cognitive changes that are more severe, it's not just due to normal aging, it's due to some kind of underlying brain pathology such as Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. Well, it's certainly been a pleasure to be with you. And KC, do you want to wrap this up?
Yes, Peter, thank you for taking time and wonderful presentation. And I'm very much encouraged by the number of questions come from the NCRO members. And I'm sure there are other questions. We encourage questions to still keep coming in even after the presentation, and we will forward those questions to Peter, and we will answer those questions directly, individually to you. And we have a survey going out after the presentations, and you will have about a couple of weeks to fill up that survey. And even in that survey, you can ask any questions you may have, and we'll follow up on each and every questions. And like we have done in the past, all the questions and answers will be cataloged and published for everybody else to see them. So there will be a record on the NCRO website. Again, thank you for wonderful presentations, and hope everyone has a good day.
Got one last question here, KC, and the answer is yes. Our Latoya Hall, our social worker, director of our SAFE program, is available for consultation with a child managing their parents' money. Absolutely.
Yeah. And one question, Peter, I would answer. I think there was a questions about getting phone calls, scam phone calls. So I have Apple iPhone, and you can go in the iPhone and you can program. So any number which is not in your phone, they will not, they will not ring, or they will come as a scam phone call. So that's a good feature iPhone has. I don't know if everyone has iPhone or not. I wish there was a similar feature on the laptop.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And now I have that in my toolbox. I'll remind people about that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
We had a question about Latoya's contact information, so I wanted to get that on the screen.
Thank you.
Again.
Perfect.
And I'm just going to check. Okay, I think that's it. So with that, thanks everyone for participating, and please have a safe day and stay healthy.